Have you ever woken up in the middle of a magnificent mansion, spanning thousands of square feet, with not a single soul around, and suddenly realized that all the glamour, money, and fame the entire world craves from you is actually nothing more than an empty seashell? For over 3 decades, the world has looked at Brad Pitt through the lens of absolute perfection. A face carved with the golden ratio of a Greek god, the rugged charisma of a golden-era movie star, and a career that completely redefined the landscape of Hollywood. People admired him. People desperately wanted to be him. Every step he took was paved by the red carpet, and every single smile he gave could exhaust millions of gallons of ink across global tabloids. Yet, behind the flashing paparazzi bulbs and the red carpets, lies a brutal truth, a truth that he has never truly shared. Until today. Behind that calm, effortless nod and nonchalant smile is a man enduring a series of quiet reflections in the dead of night. A man carrying the silent torment of a broken promise and an agonizing realization that there are some women, once you let them walk out of your life, you will never, ever be able to piece the shattered fragments of your soul back together. She wasn't just another name passing through the tabloid headlines, nor was she a fleeting co-star in a short-term blockbuster project. She was the one who altered the very fabric of his soul, the one who witnessed him at the absolute rock bottom of his downfalls, and the only one who ever taught him what true peace actually looks like. Today, we will pull back the velvet curtain to touch the rawest emotional truth, Brad Pitt's late confession, about the woman whom neither time nor 1,000 miles of distance could ever erase from the deepest chambers of his heart. A story that will force you to look back at your own choices and the sacrifices you make in your own life to understand why a man who seemingly has it all could fall into such profound regret as he crosses the twilight of his life. We must travel back in time. We must return to the dusty, windswept plains of the American Midwest. Born in 1963 in Oklahoma and raised in Springfield, Missouri, young William Bradley Pitt grew up in a devout, disciplined household. Yet he carried an underlying, simmering blood of rebellion within him. Do you see the parallel here? Just like any of us when we are young, we tend to view the world around us as a suffocating cage. We always think that happiness and greatness lie somewhere far away, on those glittering peaks we have yet to touch. Brad Pitt in his youth was no different. He detested the mundane, repetitive stillness of his quiet hometown. His craving to escape was so consuming that he chose to drop out of university, just 2 weeks shy of earning his degree. He threw himself into a journey to Los Angeles, with a mere $325 in his pocket, accepting the lowest, most grueling jobs, just to survive. From wearing a suffocating giant chicken costume, to wave in customers for a fast food diner, to driving exotic dancers through the vice-filled streets of late-night clubs. It was the sheer harshness of those days, rolling at the bottom of society, that chiseled a fiercely wild Brad Pitt, a stray beast driven by an insatiable, boundless ambition. He wasn't afraid of pain. He was only terrified of being anonymous. He plunged into acting roles like a moth rushing toward a flame, willingly stripping away his own life energy. And when Hollywood handed him the crown of a global sex symbol after the movie Thelma and Louise, he truly believed he had mastered his destiny, that he possessed the entire universe. But the young man back then did not know that standing on the highest peak without an emotional anchor only makes the inner thirst wilder and more prone to a catastrophic fall. He desperately needed a safe harbor, but the rebellious blood of his youth kept pushing him back into tempestuous seas. And then, in 1998, destiny brought Jennifer Aniston into his life. Picture this: in a Hollywood rampant with traps, transactional relationships, profound hypocrisy, and layers of cosmetic masks, Jennifer appeared like a breath of fresh morning air, pure, wholesome, and overflowing with healing energy. At that time, she was America's sweetheart, riding the wave of the massive global success of Friends. If Brad Pitt was the embodiment of a wildfire ready to incinerate everything around him with his inner chaos, Jennifer was the cool, soothing water, gently calming his unspoken wounds and silent insecurities. Looking back years later, even Brad's closest inner circle had to admit a fundamental truth. The time spent with Jennifer was when Brad Pitt was at his most human, his most grounded, and when he found true equilibrium. They married in July 2000, in a wedding that felt like a real-life fairy tale perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. In Malibu. Do you remember the image of that girl with the sun-kissed smile in her sparkling sequined gown? At that sacred moment, Brad Pitt looked deep into Jennifer's eyes and promised to love her, protect her, and build a peaceful sanctuary with her. Far away from the toxic noise of the high society elite, Jennifer gave Brad something he had lost ever since he abandoned his hometown. That was the concept of stability. She accepted the real man behind the blinding aura, put up with his dark habits, and remained the absolute firmest anchor for him to shine. In cinematic masterpieces like Fight Club and Troy, Jennifer never tried to control him, nor did she try to force him to change. She simply provided an unconditional safe space where he was allowed to be vulnerable, where he was permitted to shed the heavy armor of a superstar. When he returned home, yet, there is a brutal and terrifying paradox in human psychology. When we obtain peace too easily, we tend to take its value for granted. We mistake that peace for a permanent certainty. Over time, that very stability unknowingly turns into a suffocating cage. For a soul hardwired for conquest and danger, Brad Pitt began to feel choked. Within the absolute safety Jennifer had meticulously built for him, he failed to realize that such peace was a supreme privilege, not a restraining shackle. And that was precisely when the darkness of chaos began to whisper to him. From the outside world, in 2005, the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith began filming, and that was the exact moment fate flipped its cards on Brad Pitt's life. If Jennifer Aniston was the embodiment of a warm, gentle summer, Angelina Jolie was a tropical hurricane, furious, dangerous, wild, and utterly untamable. Let's look straight at the raw truth. Angelina Jolie possessed a destructive magnetism. For any man carrying the blood of rebellion, she wasn't merely a sexual icon. She was a woman, bearing deep, profound psychological scars, a rebellious soul that had traveled through the darkest corridors of self-destruction. When Brad Pitt faced Angelina on that set, the long-repressed instinct of a wild beast inside him violently awakened. He was utterly hypnotized by that danger. He saw in Angelina an exact mirror reflection of the madness and rebellion he had spent years trying to bury during his picture-perfect marriage. With Jennifer, the arrival of Angelina Jolie shattered Brad and Jennifer's fairy tale marriage. It was the most earth-shattering and controversial media explosion in modern Hollywood history. Faced with a choice between responsibility and peace on one hand, and wild, raw passion on the other, Brad Pitt chose to abandon his devoted wife, to plunge into an instinctive adventure with Angelina. In return, he secured a decade of living at the absolute peak of global power. They traversed war-torn lands together, adopted children together, and built the Brangelina Empire, the most powerful and media-magnetic dynasty in the world. But what is the cost of dancing with a violent storm? You cannot demand a fire to burn with untamed, frantic madness, while simultaneously expecting it to bring absolute safety and warmth to a home. The relationship with Angelina was packed with intoxicating passion, But it was equally filled with mutually destructive conflicts, the arrogance of two colossal egos, the crushing pressure of relentless public scrutiny, and the sheer chaos of managing a massive family. Slowly drained Brad Pitt's life energy, he began to turn to alcohol as his sole weapon to escape a suffocating reality. The wildness he once craved had now turned into a meat grinder, obliterating the last remnants of peace left in his soul. Ultimately, the bitter divorce in 2016, coupled with endless legal warfare and traumatic allegations of violence, served as the cruel astronomical price tag for a mistake driven by pure instinct. They say, a man only truly grows up when he is willing to stand before the ruins he created with his own hands and courageously admit, I was wrong. Following the total collapse of his marriage to Angelina Jolie, the world witnessed a completely different Brad Pitt. He vanished from extravagant Hollywood parties and abandoned the vanity of the red carpet. He locked himself away in a small sculpting studio in Los Angeles, confronting naked loneliness and cold pieces of clay. In a groundbreaking 2017 interview with GQ magazine, where he appeared with a hollowed face and tear-filled eyes, Brad admitted for the very first time that alcoholism had become a poison destroying his own happiness, and that he had to spend half a year of his life in strict, grueling rehab. But deep within those long nights,